FPL Game Week 31 final decisions. We have another game week starting today on Tuesday. So in this video, I'm going to cover hopefully everything you need to know going into Game Week 31. We're going to cover injuries. We're going to cover hot topic questions. We're going to talk about captaincy this week. We're going to talk about who those best players to be buying into your team going into Game Week 31 are. Any of you playing a wildcard, we've got a couple of drafts in this video, and we'll finish with my team. And spoiler, I've already taken a -4 this week. What is up everyone, FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 1,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new around here as well. And FPL is coming at us thick and fast, and they don't make it any easier with injuries and also not having all of the press conferences before the deadline as well. So we're going to do our best with injuries. There might be some press conferences today after this video as well, which we can cover on the deadline stream as well. We're going to start off at Newcastle, a team absolutely filled with injuries. We saw several more at the weekend, including Jamal Lascelles. He has been ruled out for 6 to 9 months. We will not be seeing him again this season. We might not be seeing him again in this calendar year as well. Another highly owned Newcastle defender was one who was in my team going into this week. I have sold him already, is Kieran Trippier. He was a doubt going into the weekend. We thought he might train. We saw him turn up to the match, but he was not featuring in the squad. Again, we don't basically have any more information. Eddie Howe has not provided us with any real update going into Everton at home. They do play on Tuesday evening, so we might potentially get some news going into the deadline, but he still remains a major doubt for this fixture. Next up is Richarlison. There were big implications to highly owned Son last week, whether Son was going to be up front or on the wing. Richarlison came on and only played 5 minutes, but Ange Postecoglou has said that he feels better. He feels good after that game. He is in contention to start this one. Now, if I own Richarlison, I don't mind selling him to someone like Salah. I don't think he's a necessary hold because I'm not certain that he starts both of the next 2 games anyway. In goal, one of the most highly owned goalkeepers is Areola at West Ham. We saw him subbed at half-time after making 3 saves, picking up 2 points, which for me was actually the better of my 2 goalkeepers, but it does look like he's going to be out for a fair few games. We've heard that he's going to be out for a minimum of a week, so that is going to miss at least Game Week 31 and Game Week 32. There is a chance he could be back for Fulham at home in Game Week 33, but that's not even a certainty at all now. Next up, Ollie Watkins, a player that lots of people sold if they're on wildcard. Non-wildcards held on to him, hoping he might get something at Wolves. And yeah, he got subbed at half-time. He now goes away to Manchester City, and he has felt a muscular injury, and we're not even certain he's going to be available for that. So to be honest, given the fixture, if you want to bench him and maybe hope he's available for Game Week 32 against Brentford, you can. But I think he's a pretty easy sell if you are looking to move on to the likes of Darwin or Alexander Isak. Next up at Chelsea is Malo Gusto. Unfortunately, because they play on Thursday, it's unlikely that we get a press conference before the deadline on Tuesday. It's likely to be a Wednesday press conference for Chelsea. However, I wouldn't go selling him. It does sound like the substitution was a bit of a precaution. He went onto the bench rather than going down the tunnel and was on the pitch at the full time, going around and applauding the fans, even though they did drop points. Moving on to Manchester City, there is even more chaos going there. Injuries are the story of this FPL season, it feels like. Ake did pick up an injury, and it sounds like he and Kyle Walker are going to be out for a fair few games still. John Stones has the ability to return sooner, and in goal, Edison does sound like he is getting better, but he was nowhere near being available to start that Arsenal game. That does mean Ortega at 3.7 should get the next couple of games. Now, unfortunately, I'm sure some of you are asking more detailed injury updates on some of the players that we've got playing potentially on Wednesday, the likes of Saka, Gabriel, looking at Manchester City, why Phil Foden came off early, and we will likely get press conferences today on some of those teams. All of the teams playing Tuesday or Wednesday should have a press conference by the time the Game Week 31 deadline does come around, but be cautious that those teams playing on Thursday, particularly Liverpool, Chelsea, Manchester United, and then Sheffield United as well, for anyone who owns their players, you are very unlikely to get a press conference. So we might be left guessing on some of the fitness, potentially looking at, you know, is Gusto going to be back? When are Alisson and Trent going to be back? Can you buy Kelleher and Bradley? We probably won't know that for certain before the deadline. Now, one of the key questions I got asked when I asked for questions for this video is which midfielders are acceptable to sell for Salah this week. Now, a lot of you are looking at a potential midfielder sell of Son, Foden or Bukayo Saka. Now, of course, we might get a Saka injury update going into the deadline, and if there's any chance he's ruled out, then you could sell him. But based off those 3 midfielders, then Foden is the easiest sell. then Son, and if Saka is fit, he is the best hold. Of course, he does double in game week 34 as well. Now, if you've got a Gross, you've got a Richarlison in your team, you've got someone else that you can sell to Salah, a Gordon, like I'm doing this week, then yes, they are better sells than all of Foden, Son, and Saka. But if those are the three midfielders you have the ability to sell this week, I would sell Foden first. Just based off the early sub we got on Sunday, they've got crazy fixture schedule over the next few weeks. They've got Champions League coming up as well, and I do expect Pep Roulette to hit hard over the next few weeks. Now, next up is, should you be taking hits or playing a wildcard this week? Now, if you have 7 or 8 flags like me and you have no free hit, I still think that saving your wildcarding until game week 35 is the better strategy. Being able to plan for game week 34 and then wildcard into a bench boost in game week 37 is still the best strategy, even if you have to take a -8 or -12 this week. It is definitely the way that I think I'll be going this week. If you have your free hit left, then absolutely I think a game week 31 wildcard is fine, and we will be going through that in just a moment. In terms of captaincy, Salah is definitely my number 1. Saka, if we knew he was guaranteed to play, would be my number 2, but we've seen early substitutions. We know he has a little bit of a knock, so he is number 3, with Erling Haaland at home being number 2. Now, Haaland's form has not been amazing recently, but it is still against an Aston Villa team who are much better at home than they are away from home, and Haaland still is the best goal scorer in the Premier League at the moment. Son is number 4, still away at West Ham, but we know how they're conceding chances, and if you want a differential and you can buy Darwin Núñez, you can hope he puts it in the goal against Sheffield United. Now, looking at top players for you to all buy this week, of course, those with the green tick are the ones with a double in game week 34. So if you need players for game week 34, you can look at the ones with the double. If you're free hitting in game week 34, then maybe some of those other players in there and other players outside of this list might be a little bit more beneficial, but most people don't have their free hit left, so doubling players are definitely a priority. For me, the number 1 goalkeeper, now they've got that City game out of the way, although they kept a clean sheet, is David Raya of Arsenal. A nice run of fixtures between now and the end of the season, chasing that Premier League title and doubling game week 34. Another option is Jose Sarr, actually a pretty decent run and doubling in game week 34 as well. Petrovic still remains my number 1 goalkeeper to buy if you are free hitting in game week 34. Of course, they go away to Arsenal that week and they have Manchester United, but long-term fixtures and doubles, I still like him as a buy. Neto of Bournemouth is next. He, of course, doubles. A lot of people already owned him from his double in game week 34. And if you need a slightly cheaper one, Jordan Pickford at Everton, away at Newcastle this week, but with their injuries, is it the end of the world? And then Burnley at home in game week 32, and a double including Nottingham Forest at home in game week 34. Into defence, Virgil van Dijk just goes in front of the Arsenal defenders that we've got here. I just like how nailed he is, the most nailed Liverpool defender we've got. Sheffield United at home this week. Gabriel followed closely by Ben White. I'm not going to put loads of Arsenal defenders. I think Gabriel, White and Saliba are all very, very close. Gabriel is slightly cheaper, so he goes next. And then Ben White, slightly more attacking maybe than Saliba recently, but maybe slightly more prone to rotation with Tomiyasu being back. So depending on how explosive you want someone to be or how safe you want someone to be, you could go White or Saliba just behind Gabriel. Now, 8 Nori, number 4, a nice cheap option with a double. And number 5, because of the injuries to the likes of Nathan Ake and John Stones as well, Gvardiol at just 4.8 million is probably the best route into the Manchester City defence, with a nice upcoming run of fixtures and doubling later on the season, but they don't double in game week 34. Into midfield, of course, Mo Salah is number 1. He's going to be number 1. The run of fixtures, the double in 34. Saka 2, again, similar to Salah. Luis Diaz, I love. He seems to be so nailed and finding a bit of goal form as well. 7.5 million I like. Cole Palmer, even against Manchester United, continues to do well. I'd be really interested to know what you predict Cole Palmer to be. I put 8.5 million on Twitter and people think he'll be cheaper than that. But given his recent form, I really think 8.5 million could be Cole Palmer's price next year. And then Martin Odegaard, he feels like the second most nailed Arsenal midfielder behind Bukayo Saka. Havertz, Martinelli, Trossard, Jesus, all rotating for position. So if I was going to double up, it would be Martin Odegaard. Up front, Haaland is number 1, but because of his price, he probably isn't the best value, but I still think he's the best in terms of actual potential points output, despite being a little bit disappointing recently. Sure, Pep will have something in his back pocket that potentially changes that over the next few weeks. Darwin is more appealing if you are looking for a player who doubles in game week 34, followed by Solanke as well. Alexander Isak looks so clinical on penalties for Newcastle. Massive haul at the weekend, but don't let that put you off. A good fixture at home to Everton this week. And my cheap forward of choice is Mateta because of that double in game week 34. If you don't need the double in game week 34, then someone like Muniz of Fulham is a good pick. Cunha doesn't sound like he's going to be fit to start for Wolves midweek. He may well be on the bench though, as he missed out fully in game week 30. Now, looking at a wildcard draft for those of you playing it this week, we've got 2 wildcard drafts. One if you're going to free hit 34 and one if you are not. The free hit 34 option, of course, is focused about those teams going to double in game week 37. Onana, Petrovic, both predicted to double. Now, in defense, we've still got Gusto. You don't actually have to play him this week. And as long as he's back by game week 36, 37, that would actually be fine. So he is still in there as the best cheap option. Lascelles, of course, has to go compared to the wildcard draft we had last week. Dan Burn feels pretty nailed now, whether it's at centre-back, whether it's or left-back at 4.4 million. Gabriel is in there, and I've stuck with Udogie because of those Spurs doubles later down the line. And as I mentioned with the defenders to buy, Gvardiol at 4.8 is a nice option based off the City defensive injuries. Son, Saka, Salah, the big 3 in midfield are all in there. Of course, Son and Salah likely to double later. Saka doubles in 34, but even if you're free hitting that week, he would still be in my wild card. And then the best 2 cheap midfielders, the best 2 enablers, it feels like, in FPL at the moment, both with a nice run to end the season, both with predicted doubles. Garnacho at 4.9 and Cole Palmer up to 5.9 now. Up front, Haaland and Isaac are almost locked in on wildcards now if you're going to free hit 34. I've gone with Dominic Solanke. You could go Darwin. You could even go Rasmus Højlund, all of which are good options. I would recommend Nicholas Jackson, but not necessarily sure many of you would believe me if that was going to be the case. You might think it was a late April Fool's. At the moment, I've gone with Solanke. I like the short-term fixtures of Crystal Palace and then Luton in the next 2, but you definitely could go Darwin if you wanted to. Now, looking at a wildcard draft, if you're not going to free hit 34, so of course you've got to be thinking about having extra doublers that week, Darwin would probably come in for Isaac, so you have Solanke as well, and then you can move one of them to Isaac in game week 35 or beyond. Luis Diaz does come in for Son. Of course, Son blanks in 34, whereas Diaz has a double. Aït-Nouri and Munoz are both in defense. Very attacking, very good options, I think, over the next few weeks. And you go with David Raya in goal over Onana for the double up on the Arsenal defense, for their upcoming fixtures, and for their double in game week 34 as well. And finally, just to wrap up with my team. And as you can see, I have confirmed a -4. I made them on Sunday. As I mentioned, I was considering them. Now, when I went to make my moves, I saw Ben White was potentially going to go up in price. I considered Saliba. I considered Aït-Nouri. The slight early sub for Aït-Nouri did concern me enough. It does sound like he's just tired, and that was absolutely fine. So I shouldn't really have been worried about it. But it did put me off enough to not go with it. And I just like the Arsenal defense. So what I did was I sold Anthony Gordon and I bought Mo Salah, as I said. I sold Ollie Watkins to buy Mateta, as I said. And I sold Kieran Trippier to buy Ben White, as I mentioned. But I thought I would go Aït-Nouri in my transfer plans video. Now, that is a -4 confirmed. I'm left with 0.1 million in the bank. But I still am potentially considering another transfer, which would be a -8. That is looking in goal. This week, we have Kaminsky away at Arsenal. Areola unlikely to play the next couple of games as well. And I'm not really very confident relying on Kaminsky over the next few weeks. He was good when they have doubles, but when they go away to Arsenal, I'm not massively confident. So I am considering a Kaminsky out move. There are 2 goalkeepers I'm looking at, both double in game week 34. Now, I would love to go with Jose Sarr. I would love to go with Kelleher if I knew he was going to play in game week 34, but Alisson is expected back. I could go David Raya if I hadn't have gone Ben White. But the 2 that are left for me are Jordan Pickford at Everton, not great, and Dean Henderson at Crystal Palace, also not great. To be honest, because the Newcastle injuries this week, then Jordan Pickford does go and have Burnley at home, and he has Nottingham Forest at home as part of the double. I do plan on taking another -4 to do Kaminsky to Jordan Pickford. Now, I'm not 100% certain of it because I could just do it next week with my 1 free transfer, but I'm a bit undecided at the moment. I just don't really want to play Kaminsky. I really don't want him in my team this week based off me expecting that Saka does very well. So still probably 60% chance that I take the extra -4 and then 40% chance that I don't. I'll probably be deciding it on my deadline stream this evening. Captaincy is on Salah, vice captaincy on Haaland, just because I'm not fully certain of Saka's minutes. I'm glad I've got Mateta, although he doesn't start for me. He is a solid first sub because Gusto is flagged and Alfie Doughty are both flagged, along with Areola on my bench. So -4 already taken, a chance that I take another one, making it a -8 if I change my goalkeeper. So that is all for the Game Week 31 final decisions. The Game Week 31 deadline is fast approaching later today. A reminder that there will be a deadline stream today from 4 until 6, right up until that Game Week 31 deadline. It is already scheduled. Click on the link above, click notify for a reminder when that gets live. Drop any questions you have on this video. I'll answer as many as I can before that stream. If not, tune into that and we'll answer some of your questions live on that stream. Thank you so much for watching. 1,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new around here, and I'll be back again very soon.